Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at fan fiction.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it should be interesting. We're going to be looking at a story called The Serpent's Song,
Okay.
and it's a story that takes place after the Wizarding War, and it really takes a look at this kind of complicated dynamic between Severus Snape and Narcissa Malfoy.
Interesting.
Yeah, and if you're a fan of the Harry Potter universe, you know that these characters are often portrayed in a very unsympathetic light.
Right.
But this fan fiction really tries to explore their emotional landscape in a whole new way and kind of look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think is so fascinating about this particular story is that the author doesn't try to erase their past or make excuses for the things that they did.
Yeah, right.
It really delves into how these characters who are so burdened by their choices, during wartime, how they try to find some kind of peace and maybe even connection with each other in this kind of wreckage of the war.
Yeah, I mean, the story starts at the Wizengamot, and both Snape and Narcissa are facing a lot of scrutiny for the roles that they played during the war.
It's a tense scene.
Very tense. You can feel the weight of everything that's happened, bearing down on them.
Yeah.
But even in the midst of all of that, you start to see this unspoken understanding forming between them.
It's like they're the only two people in the room that really get it. They've both been judged. They've both faced these consequences for their actions, and it creates this kind of bridge between them.
Yeah, and there's just one moment that really stood out to me.
Okay.
Snape, in his very typical gruff manner, just says, "I understand," to Narcissa. And she calls him Severus for the very first time.
Oh, wow.
It's such a small detail, but it really highlights the shift in their dynamic.
It's tiny, but it speaks volumes because up until this point, they've always been very formal with each other. And there's always been this distance between them.
Yeah.
And to have this exchange, amidst all of this public scrutiny, it signals that there's this new level of intimacy
Right.
and understanding between them.
Exactly.
It's like they're acknowledging this shared vulnerability that no one else in the room can even comprehend.
Yeah, and that vulnerability that they share is really further explored through their encounters at Malfoy Manor.
Oh, Malfoy Manor.
Yes.
It's interesting because in the books, it's portrayed as this imposing, almost oppressive place.
Right.
But in the Serpent Song, it almost becomes a sanctuary.
Yeah, I was going to say that it kind of becomes this place of refuge.
Yeah.
For Snape, it's a refuge from, the judgment of the rest of the wizarding world, a place where he can just let down his guard.
Yeah.
And for Narcissa, it's a space where she's coming to terms with everything that's happened and she's tending her roses.
Oh, the roses.
Which I think really beautifully symbolizes her fragility.
Yes.
And her attempt to rebuild.
It's such a striking image. This woman who's always been so composed and elegant.
Right.
Now she's surrounded by these delicate flowers, almost like she's trying to nurture something beautiful.
Yeah.
In this world that just feels so broken.
Yeah, and it's interesting how the story really focuses on their unspoken communication.
The silences.
The silences.
Between them.
They find a lot of solace in each other's presence, even when they're not talking.
It's powerful, isn't it?
Cool.
I mean, think about it. These are two characters that have always used words as weapons.
Yeah.
They've built up these facades to protect themselves.
Right.
But with each other, they can just be...
Right.
They don't need to fill the silence with empty chatter.
It's like their silence speaks volumes.
It does. And the author does a really nice job of kind of like using those little details, the crackle of the fireplace, the snow falling outside, to actually create this atmosphere of peace and understanding.
Right.
Sometimes silence can be more profound than words, especially when you're dealing with people who have experienced trauma.
Exactly. And that makes me think about the scene where Snape finds Narcissa in the library. She's completely overwhelmed with Lucius's will and everything that's happening with Draco, and you can just feel her vulnerability in that moment.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see how Snape responds.
He's tender.
Yeah, there's this tenderness and concern that we very rarely see from him.
It's like their shared experience of loss and uncertainty. It chips away at the walls they've built around themselves.
Right.
Narcissa, she's usually so composed, but she allows herself to be vulnerable in front of him. And he, in turn, lets down his guard and shows this depth of empathy that we just never really see in the original books.
It makes you wonder if they had met under different circumstances.
Right.
Could they have formed a connection that wasn't based on shared trauma?
That's such an interesting question.
Right.
It really makes you think about how the Serpent Song challenges us to think about human connection. Maybe the most unlikely bonds are forged through these hardships.
Right.
And even people who have made really bad choices are still capable of empathy and compassion.
Yeah. As we kind of go deeper into the Serpent song, it's really cool how the author uses these little moments to really build a connection between Snape and Narcissa.
It's not about, big gestures or anything like that.
No.
It's the subtle things
Right.
that reveal how deep their bond really is.
Like a shared glance or a hand on the shoulder, or just that understanding in a moment of silence.
Yeah, those little things become really powerful expressions of their connection because we as readers, we know their history.
Yeah, and take Narcissa, for example, in the original series. She's often portrayed as this very cold and kind of aloof person.
Right.
But in the Serpent song, we see so much more.
Yeah, there's so many layers to her.
Yeah.
She's still proud and reserved, but we also see her vulnerability, her fierce love for her son,
Right.
and this quiet strength.
Yeah, it really challenges how we think about her.
It does. I mean, it reminds us that even characters who seem like they're just products of their upbringing, like in her case, that pure-blood aristocracy,
Right.
they can still surprise us.
Right.
You see her going against what's expected of her, even putting herself at risk to protect Draco.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. It shows that even people who seem to conform to these rigid social structures can still have this incredible courage and compassion.
And then you have Snape, who we've always seen as this bitter and brooding figure.
Yeah.
But here we see that he actually has a capacity for empathy and tenderness.
Which is surprising.
Very surprising. It's not that the story is trying to make him a hero or anything,
Right.
but it just lets us see that there's humanity under that gruff exterior.
Exactly. It reminds us that people aren't just good or bad.
Right.
They're a mix of everything, Snape, with all his flaws and his past mistakes, he can still genuinely care for someone.
Yeah. And the story doesn't shy away from the complexity of their past either.
I know.
They both made choices during the war that they have to live with.
Yeah.
And the story acknowledges that burden.
Yeah. It doesn't try to downplay it.
No.
Excuse it. It just shows them wrestling with it.
Right. And that's what makes their journey so interesting. It's not a simple redemption arc.
No, it's more realistic than that.
Right.
It's messy,
Yeah.
like real life.
Exactly. They're trying to move forward despite everything that's happened.
It's a more nuanced look at redemption, don't you say?
Yeah, I think so. And the way their relationship develops is so gradual.
It's a slow burn.
Yes, very slow. It's built on trust and respect and this understanding of the darkness they've both seen.
It proves that love can grow in the most unexpected places,
Right.
often out of shared pain and loss.
Yeah, their connection isn't about forgetting the past.
It's about finding a way to live with it.
Exactly. They're not erasing their past. They're just trying to heal and move forward.
Together.
Yeah, reading the Serpent song, I really found myself rooting for them.
Yeah, me too.
I wanted them to find some happiness after everything.
Yeah, it's hard not to.
It makes you think about how quick we are to judge people.
Especially in fictional worlds.
Yeah.
Based on just a little bit of information.
Right. This story really encourages us to look beyond the surface.
Yeah, to see the struggles.
Yeah.
The vulnerabilities that shape who people are.
And I think that's one of the really powerful things about fan fiction.
What do you mean?
It gives us a chance to look at stories and characters from a different angle.
Right.
We can ask, what if?
Yeah.
And explore possibilities that maybe weren't in the original.
It lets us really engage with the source material, in a creative way.
Right.
Find new interpretations.
Yeah.
Explore themes that maybe speak to us personally.
Right. Like in the Serpent song, it's all about grief and redemption.
Yeah.
And the power of connection.
Those are things we can all relate to.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether we're Harry Potter fans or not.
I'm really impressed with how the author created such a believable relationship between these two.
Yeah, it feels so real.
Right.
Like it could actually happen.
It feels true to who they are,
Yeah.
but it also gives us this whole new perspective.
It's a good reminder that even characters that seem really set in their ways,
Right.
bound by the original story,
Yeah.
they can still grow and change when you look at them through fan fiction.
It's amazing how fan fiction can breathe new life into these characters and stories.
It is, and it's all thanks to the fans,
Yeah.
Their passion and imagination.
Yeah.
It's a constantly evolving world of creativity.
It really is.
There's always something new to discover.
Speaking of discovering new things,
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear what you think about the ending of the Serpent song.
Oh, the ending.
It's not your typical happy ending,
Right.
but there's this really beautiful sense of hope
Yeah.
and understanding between them.
It's quiet, but it's powerful.
What are your thoughts on how the author wrapped things up? It really does make you think, doesn't it? I mean, it's not the classic happy ending, but it just feels so right for these two.
I agree. It's not fireworks and confetti, but I think that's what makes it so powerful.
Yeah.
Their love story, if we can even call it that.
Right.
It's subtle. It's woven into all their shared experiences and those unspoken emotions.
Right. They just find this comfort in each other's company.
Yeah, it's like they've created this little haven
Right.
where they can be themselves and they don't have to worry about judgment or pretense.
And it's interesting how the author doesn't spell everything out.
Right. It's all about what's left unsaid.
Yeah. They communicate so much through gestures and glances.
Yeah, there's that understanding between them that goes beyond words.
It's like their own secret language.
It is. And by leaving things unspoken, the author lets us, as readers, kind of fill in the blanks ourselves.
It's true. We get to imagine their conversations and their emotions, even though those things aren't written directly on the page.
And I think that really resonates with readers.
Yeah.
Because it mirrors how we experience love and connection in our own lives.
Right.
Sometimes the deepest feelings are the hardest to put into words.
Exactly. It's about those unspoken moments.
Yeah, the silences.
The small acts of kindness.
Those things speak volumes.
The Serpent song really makes us rethink what romantic love is,
It does. It's not this grand passion that we always see.
Mm-hmm.
It's quieter.
Yeah.
But still very real. It's about finding comfort and understanding after going through something really difficult.
Well, this deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about.
Hasn't it?
It really has. I'm curious, do you see Snape and Narcissa differently after reading the Serpent song?
I think so.
Yeah?
It's made me consider their complexities more.
Yeah. Are there any other relationships from Harry Potter you'd like to see explored like this?
Oh, that's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many characters in that world,
Yeah.
Characters who we only see one side of fan fiction gives us the opportunity to dig deeper.
Yeah, to look at things from different angles.
And maybe gain a better understanding of why they do the things they do.
I think that's what I love about this deep dive.
What's that?
It's a reminder that even in stories we think we know really well,
Right.
there's always something new to discover.
And the Serpent song is such a good example of that.
Yeah.
It shows how much creativity and insight there is in fan fiction.
It really does. It really makes you want to go and read more.
Me too. There's a whole world out there.
It's incredible how fans can take a story and make it their own.
It's inspiring.
It really is. So as we wrap up our depth dive into the Serpent song, we want to encourage you to keep exploring and keep asking questions.
Don't be afraid to dive into those what ifs.
And keep those imaginations running wild.
Absolutely. Until next time.
Happy reading.